Okay, in this video we're going to look through a particular logical reasoning question submitted by a student who's curious about why is A the correct answer. Alright, so we already know that this is supposed to be the right answer. Let's figure out why that would be. Well, pretending that we didn't know any of this information, the first thing you always do with a logical reasoning question on the LSAT is check to see what kind of question are we dealing with. And it does say we're looking for a flaw. So in some way, the argument is incorrect or is not. There's something we can poke a hole in. Well, let's just, the first thing we'd always do is, let's see if we can put together what the components of the argument are. And remember, generally speaking, on the LSAT, you're almost always dealing with some kind of if-then statement, right? If we have situation A, that's going to lead us to situation B, and that might lead us to situation C, whatever. But we want to just think about what our triggers are, what situation creates this thing following it. So let's parse this. The first thing we got is the view, and then we have the word that. Just automatically I know this is my subject, view, and everything coming after this is just explaining what we mean by a view. What sort of view? Well, that every person is concerned exclusively with his or her own self-interest. Okay, so I'm just going to put something down here. We make this statement about view, and I'll put maybe exclusive self-interest. I'm going to just put ESI. Oh gosh, yeah, view SE. But whatever. We have this sort of view, and then they have this word here, implies. That's just code for what this leads to. So it implies what? What is this? If I hold this view, what happens? Government by consent is impossible. So that's a negative word, right? So I'm going to put government by consent. I'll just say GBC. Government by consent can't happen. Is impossible. So there's that claim in the first sentence. All right. And then we have thus. So something's going to follow from this. Thus, social theorists, who we didn't talk about here, but we have, okay, this group of people, who believe that people are concerned only with their self-interest. So that means if you've got a group of people that hold this particular view, right? What does that mean? So if I have people that have this view concerned evidently believe that aspiring to democracy is futile. So it's kind of like this. Okay, so if you have a group and they hold this view, I'm not going to write the ESI, I'll just say the view, then that must mean we can't have democracy, according to the author, right? And why? Well, remember what we talked about is that if we've got the same, I should probably put the ESI right there just for a minute. If we have the same situation and they end up leading to two different things, the only way that is logically possible, right? If I believe this and it leads me to believing that this is impossible, if I believe the same thing, it means that therefore I must believe this. Well, there's got to be some sort of equivalence between these two things, right? Somehow believing in this, no democracy must indicate no government by consent or vice versa. Let's see what we got here. So that's not, right now, this is not explicitly made clear. But look at this. And then it says, since democracy is not possible in the absence, or so not having, government by consent. So the author does state, we can't, democracy is not possible in the absence of, so if I do not have GBC, that must mean I cannot have democracy. Oops, what did I just do right there? Sorry about that. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, so that must mean GBC, not government by consent, means not democracy. Okay. So, again, according to these terms here, it looks like the authors kind of put these things kind of neatly together here. So let's see if we can parse this out. It means if we hold this particular view, that people are essentially self-interested, that means, according to the first statement, that we would not believe in government by consent. And we know that that triggers this, so that means that leads to not democracy. So the author is claiming, all right, if you have some person or group that holds this view right here, it must mean they don't believe in democracy. Well, okay, doesn't seem like there's necessarily any logical flaw here, but we're supposed to find one, so let's see what might the error be. Let's go backwards, since we know A is supposed to be the correct answer. Let's just see what happens if we reverse it. E, fails to consider that even if an argument's conclusion is false, some of the assumptions used to justify that conclusion may nevertheless be true. But let's just think, don't overthink this. Anywhere in there is the author indicating that our conclusion, he could say this one, or, the democracy one, is, well, ultimately it's the, not democracy, if we chain this all out like that. But is the author indicating anywhere that this is false? Short answer is no, right? We're basically making this claim that if you hold this view, you have to end up with this conclusion. We're not saying anything about, that conclusion might be wrong, but at the same time, these little intermediary steps here, might be valid some way. That just doesn't make any sense. So that's out. D, attempts to discredit a theory by discrediting those who espouse that theory. Does that happen? Do we have any character assassination going on here? Short answer is no. Think about interpreting that. If we're discrediting people who espouse that theory, it's kind of like, okay, your idea is wrong because you're a moron, right? I'm not attacking the idea itself or the conclusion. I'm just saying the person who stated it is flawed in some way, and therefore somehow that's a problem. So no, that doesn't appear in here at all clearly. Sorry, where's my pen? There it is. That's out. C, infers that because something is true of each individual person belonging to a group, it is true of the group as a whole. Well, okay, let me just pause here for a second. First off, that's not really a fallacy there. Like, we can think of, like, if it's true that everybody in my team is wearing a red shirt, then it's completely logical to say that the group has, wears red shirts. I mean, that's not a flaw. But before we even get into that, notice what's going on here. We're talking about individuals versus groups. Does that dichotomy or contrast appear anywhere in this? The short answer is no. We're not talking about, well, if you believe this, if one person believes that, then everybody who falls. We just talk about groups. Just the only group that we're targeting or individuals is this phrase here: social theorists who believe something. Well, that's a group right there. We don't have any kind of individual, like, oh, if you are, a part of this, if you're a member of this club and you hold this, no. It doesn't do that. So we don't have, I feel like I'm babbling here, but we do not have any kind of contrast between groups and individuals. And so right off the bat, that means I think we could get rid of this one too, right? We have the whole same thing, group versus individual here. If something is true of a group of people, it is true of every individual. But nowhere do we say, like, okay, well then if you joined the Republican Party, that therefore, if Mr. Jones is Republican, he must obviously, be in favor of, I don't know, Donald Trump, since the majority of Republicans are, something like that, right? But we don't have, in this argument here, any contrast between an individual and the group. It's just talking about the group. So this has to be out. But let's look at A. We're just kind of left with this. Infers merely from the fact of someone's holding a belief that you believe an implication. Or you can think about it. Implication is a consequence or a result, a logical, of that belief. Well, that is the only thing that somewhat makes sense here, because think about what the author's saying, is that if you hold this belief, if you are in this group here, that individual, self-interest is paramount, okay, then that must mean that you end up holding this view here. So the author's saying that if you do that, then logically this must be your next jump, and then this also has to be your next jump as well. Now, I find that to be kind of logically valid in the way that this is structured, but you can think about it. The assumption is that if you are here, then you must necessarily, agree with the implication or the result at the end. I feel like this is going kind of long and probably didn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's why A would be the answer. Is for that, at least at the very least of this is because B, C, D, and E clearly could not be the case. That don't fit with the scenario. All right, we're running long. I'll stop there. Hopefully that was helpful. If not, let me know.